I'm Cassandra Taylor, 29, standing frozen in the middle of my mother Diana's lavish 60th birthday celebration at the Westview Country Club. The crystal chandeliers suddenly feel too bright as I extend the small, carefully wrapped gift toward her. My mother's perfectly made-up face twists into something between amusement and disdain. "You're not getting a cent of my money. You've always been too independent for your own good." Her voice rings out, silencing nearby conversations. Wealthy family friends shift uncomfortably. Cocktail glasses paused midair. My sister Madison smirks from behind her champagne. The gift, a vintage brooch I spent months saving for trembles in my outstretched hand. If you've ever been publicly humiliated by family, you know that stomach-dropping feeling. Where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and like if you've experienced that burning shame of family betrayal. And stick around to see how I finally stood up for myself. Every morning, I arrive at Bridgeport Elementary School by 7:15 a.m. While most of my college friends pursued lucrative careers in finance or marketing, I chose to teach kindergarten in one of our city's lowest income districts. The colorful classroom with its tiny chairs and alphabet posters feels more like home than anywhere else. When 5-year-old Jamal finally recognized all his letters last week, his face lit up with a pride worth more than any commission check. My mother never understood this choice. Diana Taylor built Taylor Luxury Properties from nothing, transforming herself from a secretary with a GED into one of the city's most successful real estate moguls. Her definition of success comes with designer labels and waterfront property. My tiny one-bedroom apartment with its secondhand furniture and modest rent would horrify her if she ever bothered to visit, which she hasn't in the 3 years I've lived there. The irony isn't lost on me that I grew up in a succession of increasingly magnificent houses that never quite felt like home. My mother was always too busy closing deals to attend school functions or help with homework. When she was physically present, her attention remained fixed on her phone, constantly texting clients or checking market listings. My sister Madison followed in her footsteps perfectly. At 26, she already drives a Mercedes and specializes in selling luxury condos downtown. Their relationship blossomed when Madison joined the family business after college, their conversations flowing easily around property values and investment opportunities. The distance between my mother and me grew proportionally to her closeness with Madison. Last Tuesday, when the embossed invitation to her 60th birthday celebration arrived in my mailbox, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this milestone birthday had softened her. Maybe she was extending an olive branch after our last argument 6 months ago about my wasted potential. I spent an entire evening crafting the perfect response card, accepting the invitation with genuine excitement. The vintage brooch caught my eye in a little antique shop 3 months ago. With delicate silver filigree surrounding a small pearl, it reminded me of one my grandmother used to wear before she passed away. My mother rarely spoke about her mother-in-law, but the few family photos I had showed Grandma Taylor wearing a similar piece. Despite costing nearly an entire week's salary, I put it on layaway, making payments each month until I could finally bring it home last weekend. My friend Rachel came over the night before the party to help me get ready. She curled my hair and helped me apply makeup, something I rarely bother with for teaching. The navy blue dress I found on clearance at Nordstrom Rack was simple but elegant, hitting just below the knee with a modest neckline. Rachel assured me I looked sophisticated yet approachable. "Your mom will be so touched by the brooch," Rachel said, helping me wrap it in delicate silver paper. "It shows how much thought you put into this." The 40-minute drive to Westview Country Club gave me plenty of time to rehearse what I'd say. I practiced variations of happy birthday. Mom imagined her face softening with appreciation when she opened my gift. The valet took my keys with a barely concealed look of surprise as my 10-year-old Honda pulled up among the Bentleys and BMWs lining the circular drive. The country club's marble foyer gleamed under ornate chandeliers, and waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Several of my mother's friends greeted me warmly. Mrs. Richardson, her tennis partner, exclaimed over how grown up I looked. Mr. Dawson, her attorney, asked about that teaching thing with polite curiosity. For a moment, as I spotted my mother across the room in her crimson designer dress, our eyes met and she smiled. My heart lifted. Maybe tonight would be different. "Cassandra, darling, "What an interesting choice of dress, Mrs. Pemberton commented, eyeing my clearance rack find with the practiced assessment of someone who could identify designer labels at 50 paces. So, practical. I smiled tightly, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing waiter. Thank you. I thought it was appropriate for the occasion. Of course, dear. So tell me, are you still doing that teaching job? In the public schools? Her emphasis made it sound like I worked in a war zone rather than a classroom. Before I could answer, another of my mother's friends joined us. Cassandra was always so good with children, she remarked, as though discussing a teenage babysitter rather than a certified educator with a master's degree. Though I always thought you'd follow your mother into real estate. Such a lucrative field. I find teaching incredibly rewarding, I replied, taking a sip of champagne to hide my discomfort. My students make progress every day. But surely the salary can't be much, Mrs. Pemberton pressed. How do you manage? I was saved from answering by Madison's arrival. My sister looked stunning in a form-fitting red dress that complemented our mother's, her blonde hair styled in perfect waves. She air-kissed both women before turning to me with a practiced smile. Cass, you made it. Mom wasn't sure you'd come. She looked me up and down. Cute dress. Is it new? Relatively, I answered, knowing full well Madison could tell it wasn't designer. You look beautiful, as always. Madison beamed, extending her wrist to show off a diamond tennis bracelet. Mom's early birthday gift to me, to celebrate breaking $5 million in sales this quarter. Her eyes gleamed with triumph. I just closed the Henderson property yesterday. You know, that waterfront estate? 7 figures. Biggest commission of my career. Congratulations, I said, genuinely happy for her success despite the subtle dig. That's impressive, isn't it? Mom's throwing a separate celebration next week. Just the team and a few select clients. The implication that I wasn't invited hung between us. As the evening progressed, I navigated through clusters of my mother's friends and business associates. Diana Taylor had cultivated her social circle as carefully as her investment portfolio, surrounding herself with people who reflected her values of wealth and status. I spotted my mother holding court near the bar, laughing at something her new husband, Walter, said. At 65, Walter Harrington had brought even more wealth and connections to my mother's life when they married 2 years ago. Unlike her, he occasionally showed interest in my career, asking thoughtful questions about education whenever we met. There's my brilliant stepdaughter, Walter said warmly when I approached, kissing my cheek. Diana, look who's here. My mother turned, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. Cassandra, I'm glad you could make it. She gave me a quick one-armed hug, careful not to spill her martini. That color washes you out a bit, doesn't it? You should have consulted Madison before shopping. I swallowed the familiar sting of her criticism. Happy birthday, Mom. The party looks amazing. 60 is the new 40, they say, she laughed, tossing her expertly highlighted hair. Though some of us age more gracefully than others. You really should start using better skincare, Cassandra. Those fluorescent lights in your classroom aren't doing you any favors. Walter shot me an apologetic look. How are your students doing? Any future real estate moguls in the bunch? Before I could answer, my mother cut in. Honestly, Walter, they can barely afford lunch. I doubt any of them will own property, let alone sell it. She turned to me. Speaking of which, have you given any more thought to what we discussed at Christmas? Madison could use an assistant, and at least you'd be learning a valuable skill. I appreciate the offer, but I love teaching, I said firmly. My students need consistency in their lives. My mother sighed dramatically. Well, don't come crying to me when you're still renting at 40 with nothing to show for your life. As she turned away to greet another guest, I heard her mutter to Walter, so stubborn, just like her father. I excused myself, needing a moment away from her cutting remarks. Near the restrooms, I overheard my mother's voice from around the corner. She was speaking to her friend Eleanor. Of course she shows up in off the rack when everyone else is in designer, my mother was saying. It's like she deliberately tries to embarrass me. And did you see her apartment in those Facebook photos? Furnished like a college dorm. I raised her for better things, Eleanor. She seems happy, Diana, Eleanor replied mildly. And teaching is an honorable profession. It's a waste, is what it is. All that private school tuition, the best colleges, and she chooses to babysit other people's children for pennies. Madison at least understands the value of building something. Cassandra just wants to play with finger paints and story time. I pressed myself against the wall, my chest tight with hurt. For a moment, I considered grabbing my purse and leaving. What was the point of staying where I was so clearly unwelcome? But the small wrapped box in my clutch reminded me why I'd come. Despite everything, I wanted to give my mother her gift, to make one more attempt at connection. The dinner portion of the evening was an elegant 5-course meal served on fine china. I was seated at a table far from my mother, surrounded by business associates I barely knew. Madison, naturally, was at the head table beside our mother, laughing and charming everyone within reach. As I picked at my poached salmon, a young waiter approached with a water pitcher. "Miss Taylor," he said quietly, "I just wanted to say thank you. You probably don't remember me, but you were my kindergarten teacher 5 years ago at Bridgeport. I'm in community college now, working here part-time." I looked up in surprise, studying his face. "Jason? Jason Rodriguez?" His face broke into a wide smile. "You remember. You helped me learn to read when everyone else had given up. My mom still talks about it." For the first time that evening, I felt a genuine warmth spread through me. "I'm so proud of you, Jason. Are you enjoying college?" "Yes, ma'am. Studying business management." He lowered his voice. "Your mom's a big deal around here, but what you do is more important, if you ask me." As he moved on to the next table, I sat a little straighter. His words were a timely reminder of why I chose teaching the real impact that couldn't be measured in square footage or sales commission. After dinner, my mother rose for her birthday speech, champagne flute in hand. She looked radiant in her designer dress, diamond earrings catching the light as she addressed her guests. "At 60, I find myself reflecting on legacy," she began, her voice confident from years of sales, pitches, and networking events. "What we build, what we leave behind. Taylor Luxury Properties isn't just a company, it's my life's work, my contribution to this city's landscape." She gestured toward Madison, who beamed at her side. "I'm fortunate to have a daughter who understands the value of legacy, who's already making her mark in the business." Her gaze swept the room, briefly passing over me without lingering. Success isn't accidental. It's a choice we make every day, a commitment to excellence and growth. Some people learn this lesson. Her eyes flickered to me for a split second, and some people never do. The subtle barb wasn't lost on the guests nearest me, who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I stared at my dessert plate, focusing on breathing evenly as my mother continued extolling the virtues of ambition and financial achievement. After her speech came the gift presentation. Close friends and business associates approached with expensive packages: a Hermes scarf, Tiffany jewelry, weekend getaways to exclusive resorts. Madison presented her gift with flourish: a limited edition designer watch that elicited gasps of admiration. "It's perfect, darling," my mother exclaimed, embracing Madison while flashbulbs popped around them. "You always know exactly what I love." From across the room, I caught Eleanor watching me with a sympathetic expression. Unlike most of my mother's friends, Eleanor Chapman had always been kind to me, asking about my teaching with genuine interest whenever we met. She'd been my mother's friend since college, before the money and status, and seemed to be the only person who could occasionally speak truth to her without consequences. As I watched the parade of expensive gifts, I couldn't help remembering the school play when I was 8 years old. I'd been cast as the lead in our production of The Wizard of Oz and had practiced my lines for weeks. The night of the performance, I peered out from behind the curtain, scanning the audience for my mother's face. The seat reserved for her remained empty throughout the entire show. Later, she explained that a client had called with an emergency regarding a closing. It wasn't the first school event she'd missed, nor would it be the last. Quite the production, isn't it? I looked up to find Jason the waiter refreshing my water glass. "Your students had a great play last month," he continued quietly. "My little sister was the tree. She couldn't stop talking about how you helped her overcome her stage fright." I smiled, grateful for the reminder of my real world beyond this gilded celebration. "Marissa was wonderful. She really blossomed on stage." "That's what you do, Miss Taylor. You help people blossom." He nodded respectfully before moving on. As the gift-giving continued, I tried to build my courage to approach my mother. The small silver package seemed increasingly inadequate among the luxury items being presented. Madison caught my eye from across the room, raising an eyebrow before sauntering over. "You're not actually planning to give Mom that tiny package, are you?" she asked, glancing at my clutch where the gift was partially visible. "It's something special," I said defensively. "Something personal." Madison sighed dramatically. "Look, Cass, you know how Mom is about appearances. Whatever's in that little box is just going to embarrass both of you." She lowered her voice. "Why don't you just say your gift is being delivered later? I can help you pick out something more appropriate tomorrow." "I chose this gift carefully," I insisted. "It has meaning." "Suit yourself," Madison shrugged. "But don't say I didn't warn you." Across the room, I could hear my mother loudly praising the managing partner of her firm for his gift of crystal champagne flutes. "Charles always has the most exquisite taste. These are absolute perfection." For a moment, I considered following Madison's advice and hiding my gift away. But something in me rebelled at the thought. I'd put months of thought and savings into this present. If my mother couldn't appreciate the sentiment behind it, perhaps that said more about her than about me. With a deep breath, I stood and made my way toward her, the small silver package clutched tightly in my hand. My heart pounded as I approached, silently rehearsing what I would say. Despite years of disappointment, a stubborn flicker of hope remained. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this gift would finally bridge the gap between us. The crystal chandeliers seemed to brighten as I approached my mother, who stood surrounded by admirers cooing over her collection of birthday treasures. She wore that particular smile I recognized from childhood, the one reserved for public appearances, photo shoots, and open houses. It never quite reached her eyes. "Mom?" My voice came out softer than intended. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Mom, I have something for you." Diana turned, martini in hand, her expression shifting subtly when she saw me. Something calculating flickered behind her eyes as she registered the small package in my hands. "Cassandra has a gift," she announced to the circle around her, her voice carrying just enough to draw additional attention from nearby guests. The room quieted as faces turned toward us. "How thoughtful of you to remember your mother's birthday." The barb was subtle, as if I might have forgotten, but I pushed past it, extending the silver-wrapped box with both hands. "Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you like it." She set down her martini and took the package, weighing it in her manicured hands. "So small," she commented, loud enough for those around us to hear. "But good things come in small packages, they say." I watched nervously as she unwrapped it with deliberate precision, preserving the silver paper as though she might reuse it. When she lifted the lid of the velvet box, her eyebrows rose slightly. "A brooch," she said flatly. "It's vintage," I explained quickly, stepping closer. "It reminded me of the one Grandma Taylor used to wear in those old photos. Remember? The ones from before I was born?" Something hardened in her expression. She lifted the brooch between two fingers as if examining a suspicious object. The pearl gleamed softly in the chandelier light, the silver filigree catching subtle rainbows. "How quaint," she said finally. "Though I'm not sure when I'd wear something so dated." My chest tightened. I thought maybe for casual occasions or— "Let me guess," she interrupted, her voice rising. "This is from that little second-hand shop near your apartment? The one with all the dusty trinkets in the window?" Heat rushed to my face. "It's an antique shop, actually." I thought, "You're not getting a cent of my money. You've always been too independent for your own good," she laughed, the sound brittle and cutting. "Is that why you bought this? Trying to butter me up after years of ignoring my advice? A little vintage trinket isn't going to change my mind about my will, darling." The room fell silent. 50 pairs of eyes fixed on us, some embarrassed, some curious, a few even amused. My stomach plummeted as her words registered. She thought I was trying to get her money? After everything? "That's not why I began," my voice faltering. "Oh, please." She closed the box with a snap, handing it to Walter, who stood uncomfortably at her side. "You've spent years making it clear you want nothing to do with my world, my values, my success. You chose to work with children who can barely afford lunch instead of building something meaningful, and now you show up with this thrift store costume jewelry expecting what, exactly? A sudden change of heart? Each word landed like a physical blow. I stood frozen, unable to move or speak, as she continued. This is exactly the problem with your generation. Everyone, she announced to the room at large. They reject everything we try to teach them, insist on finding themselves and making a difference, then come crawling back when they realize that passion doesn't pay the bills. Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd. I glimpsed Madison at the edge of the circle, smirking into her champagne glass. A few guests had the decency to look away, studying their shoes or suddenly finding their phones fascinating. "Mom, that's not what this was about," I managed finally, my voice barely audible. "I just thought that's always been your problem, Cassandra. You don't think, not about your future, not about your image, not about the opportunities I've handed you on a silver platter that you've consistently rejected." She turned to her friends with a dramatic sigh. I've tried for years to help her, offered her positions in the company, introductions to eligible bachelors with actual prospects, even to pay for a business degree. And every time, this stubborn independence. "Diana," Walter murmured, placing a hand on her arm. "Perhaps this isn't the time." "No, it's fine." My mother waved him off. Cassandra made her choice long ago. She'd rather play with finger paints than build a real career. She'd rather live in that sad little apartment than accept any help from me. And that's her right, of course. She fixed me with a pointed stare. But choices have consequences. With that, she turned away, effectively dismissing me in front of everyone. Now, who wants to see what Charles brought? The most exquisite crystal. I stood rooted to the spot, humiliation washing over me in burning waves. My ears rang with her words, drowning out the conversations that slowly resumed around me. The room seemed to spin slightly, faces blurring as tears threatened. With as much dignity as I could muster, I turned and walked, not ran, though every instinct screamed at me to flee toward the restrooms at the back of the venue. Each step felt like moving through molasses, my legs wooden and uncooperative. Once inside the marble-tiled bathroom, I locked myself in a stall, pressing my forehead against the cool door. As the tears finally came, they weren't loud, dramatic sobs, but silent streams that carried years of accumulated hurt. The brooch, which had represented months of saving, of hope, of trying one last time to connect, had become another weapon in her arsenal against me. The bathroom door opened, and I quickly wiped my face, not wanting to be caught crying like a child. Soft footsteps approached my stall. "Cassandra?" Eleanor's gentle voice carried through the door. "Are you all right, dear?" I took a shuddering breath, trying to compose myself. "I'm fine, Eleanor. Just needed a moment." "What Diana did out there was inexcusable," she said firmly. "May I speak with you? Please." Reluctantly, I unlocked the door, keeping my gaze fixed on the floor as I emerged. Eleanor's kind face creased with concern as she took in my reddened eyes and trembling hands. "My dear girl," she said softly, "I am so sorry." "It's fine," I said automatically. "I'm used to it. That's even worse." She guided me to the small seating area by the vanity. "You shouldn't be used to being treated that way by your own mother." I shrugged helplessly. She's always been disappointed in me. I should have known better than to think a birthday gift would change anything. Eleanor sighed heavily. "There's something you should know, Cassandra. Something I've hesitated to tell you for years. But after tonight," she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Your mother has been telling people you constantly ask her for money." "What?" I stared at her in disbelief. "I haven't asked her for a dime since college." "I know that. But she's created this narrative that you're always coming to her for handouts while rejecting her wisdom about how to live your life. It's why she made that scene tonight she was performing for an audience she's been prepping for years." The revelation hit like a physical blow. But why would she lie like that? Because it's easier than admitting the truth that her daughter chose a different path and is content without the trappings she values. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "For what it's worth, I think what you do is remarkable. Those children are lucky to have someone who cares more about their futures than about status symbols." I looked up, surprised by her words. "You do?" "Of course. I was a public school teacher for 15 years before I married Bill and started the foundation." She smiled at my shocked expression. "Diana conveniently forgets to mention that part of my background at her parties. I had no idea, I admitted. Your mother and I have been friends since before she was Diana Taylor, real estate mogul. I've watched her change over the years, and not always for the better. Eleanor's expression grew serious. She treated your father the same way before their divorce. Nothing he did was ever enough. Every gift was criticized, every accomplishment minimized. My father had left when I was 12, unable to withstand my mother's constant belittling. We'd maintained a relationship through occasional visits and phone calls until his death. 5 years ago, another event my mother had deemed unworthy of her attendance. There's something else you should know, Eleanor continued gently. Your resemblance to your grandmother, your father's mother, is striking. The same eyes, the same gentle manner. Diana was always jealous of her mother-in-law, who never quite approved of her ambition or methods. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The brooch, my grandmother, the instant hardening in my mother's expression when I'd mentioned her. So when I gave her a brooch like Grandma's, it was like pouring salt in a wound she's nursed for decades. Eleanor nodded. None of this excuses her behavior, but perhaps it helps explain it. We sat in silence for a moment, the muffled sounds of the party continuing without us. What do I do now? I asked finally. Just go back out there and pretend she didn't just humiliate me in front of everyone she knows. Eleanor studied me thoughtfully. What do you want to do? For the first time that evening, perhaps for the first time in years of navigating my relationship with my mother, I allowed myself to consider that question honestly. What did I want? Not what would please her or cause the least conflict, but what would honor my own feelings. I think, I said slowly, I need to stop trying to win approval I'm never going to get. Eleanor's validation gave me enough composure to splash cold water on my face and reapply my minimal makeup. We walked back toward the party together. But before rejoining the crowd, I spotted Walter standing alone near a side door, studying his phone with a troubled expression. I should thank him for trying to intervene, I told Eleanor. He's always been kind to me. She nodded. I'll give you some privacy. And Cassandra? Whatever you decide to do tonight, know that your mother's opinion isn't the only one that matters. As Eleanor melted back into the party, I approached my stepfather. Walter? I wanted to thank you for trying to stop things earlier. He looked up, genuine concern crossing his face. Cassandra, are you all right? That was uncomfortable to witness. I've had better evenings, I admitted with a weak smile. But I appreciate that you tried to step in. Walter glanced around as if ensuring no one was within earshot, then lowered his voice. Your mother can be difficult, particularly where you're concerned. That's putting it mildly. I sighed. I don't understand why she invited me if she was just planning to humiliate me. A flash of discomfort crossed his face. About that, there's something you should probably see. He hesitated, then pulled up a document on his tablet. This might help explain tonight's performance. I took the tablet, scanning what appeared to be a legal document. The header read Last Will and Testament of Diana Elizabeth Taylor Harrington. As I skimmed the formal language, certain phrases jumped out. Sole beneficiary, Madison Claire Taylor, and expressly disinherit my daughter, Cassandra Lynn Taylor. She updated her will yesterday, Walter said quietly. Had her attorney rush it through. I stared at him, the implications sinking in. She planned this. The whole scene. She invited me here specifically to announce she was cutting me out of her will in front of everyone. Walter nodded grimly. I tried to talk her out of it. Suggested a private conversation would be more appropriate. But Diana has always had a flair for the dramatic. But why? I've never asked for her money. I've never expected an inheritance. I think that's precisely the problem. Walter took back the tablet, closing the document. Your independence threatens her. Diana measures love and loyalty in terms of control and influence. The fact that you've built a life without either disturbs her deeply. The truth of his words resonated through me. Every major conflict with my mother had centered around my refusal to follow her prescribed path. My choice of college major, my career, my apartment, my dating life. Each independent decision had been treated as a personal rejection, rather than a natural part of growing up. There's something else, Walter added, his voice even lower. The brooch you gave her, it's nearly identical to one your grandmother left you in her will. Diana was executor of your father's estate after he passed. I'm not certain, but I suspect she may have kept certain items that were meant for you. The revelation struck like lightning. She stole from me? I can't prove it, Walter said quickly, but there was an inventory of your grandmother's jewelry in some paperwork I came across. Several pieces were designated for you, including a pearl brooch with silver filigree. My mind reeled with this new information. Not only had my mother deliberately set me up for public humiliation, she'd potentially withheld items my grandmother had specifically wanted me to have. Why are you telling me this? I asked, studying his concerned face. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I've watched how she treats you. It's the same pattern I've seen in her business dealings. Isolate, undermine, control. I've looked the other way too many times because it was easier than confronting her. But tonight crossed a line. I felt something shift inside me, a fundamental change in how I viewed not just this evening, but my entire relationship with my mother. Years of seeking approval, of making excuses for her behavior, of blaming myself for not being the daughter she wanted, all of it suddenly appeared in a new light. Thank you for showing me this, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. It actually helped. Walter looked surprised. It does? Yes. I straightened my shoulders, a strange calm settling over me. It confirms what I've suspected for years but wouldn't admit to myself. My mother doesn't just disapprove of my choices. She fundamentally doesn't accept me as I am. And no gift, no achievement, no compromise on my part is ever going to change that. The realization was simultaneously heartbreaking and liberating. The weight of trying to earn my mother's love, a battle I could never win, suddenly lifted from my shoulders. What will you do now? Walter asked. I took a deep breath, clarity washing through me. I'm going to stop playing a game that's rigged against me. I'm going to stop hoping for approval from someone who's determined to withhold it. He nodded slowly. That sounds healthy. It's long overdue. I glanced toward the main room where the party continued, my mother's laughter carrying over the ambient noise. But first, I think I need to say a proper goodbye. Walter looked alarmed. You're not planning to create a scene? I smiled, a genuine one this time. No, that's her specialty, not mine. But I am going to speak my truth, just once. After that, she can do whatever she wants with her money, her will, and her opinions. They won't be my concern anymore. As I turned to walk back to the party, Walter touched my arm lightly. Cassandra, for what it's worth, I think you've built something more valuable than real estate, a life of purpose and integrity. Don't let her take that from you. His words strengthened my resolve as I moved toward the sound of clinking glasses and forced laughter. For 29 years, I'd measured myself against my mother's impossible standards. Tonight, that would end not with a whimper, but with dignity intact. The party had reached that point in the evening where inhibitions were lowered by expensive champagne and the music had shifted to more upbeat selections. My mother held court at the main table, surrounded by her inner circle of friends and business associates. Madison sat at her right hand, both of them laughing at something Charles from the firm was saying. I approached calmly, no longer feeling the nervous flutter that had accompanied me earlier. Eleanor caught my eye from across the room, giving me an encouraging nod. Excuse me, I said, my voice clear and steady as I reached the table. May I have everyone's attention for a moment? My mother's laughter cut off abruptly, her eyes narrowing as she registered my presence. Cassandra, darling, we're in the middle of something here. This will only take a minute, I replied, maintaining eye contact. I'd like to say a few words for your birthday, if I may. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Madison rolled her eyes dramatically, but my mother's social training kicked in, causing a scene would reflect poorly on her, and appearances were everything. Of course, she said, with a tight smile. Everyone. My eldest daughter would like to say a few words. As the surrounding conversations quieted, I felt dozens of eyes turned toward me. Rather than intimidating me, the attention felt oddly empowering. For once, I would control the narrative. Thank you, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. First, I want to wish my mother a very happy 60th birthday. 60 years of life is certainly worth celebrating. My mother's smile remained fixed, though wariness crept into her eyes. Many of you have known my mother for years as a businesswoman, a friend, a pillar of the community. I've had the unique privilege of knowing her as a mother. I paused, letting the words settle, and tonight, I want to thank her for some important lessons she's taught me. The tension at the table was palpable now. My mother's knuckles whitened around her champagne flute. My mother taught me that success can be defined in many ways, I continued. While she built an empire of properties and investments, I found my calling in a kindergarten classroom in Bridgeport. Both paths require dedication, skill, and passion. They just yield different kinds of returns. I scanned the faces watching me, finding a mix of discomfort, curiosity, and from Eleanor and a few others, quiet approval. I want to clarify something that seems to have caused confusion tonight. I've never wanted my mother's money. I've never asked for it, and I've never expected it. The brooch I gave her wasn't an attempt to secure an inheritance. It was simply a daughter trying to give her mother a meaningful gift on a milestone birthday. My mother shifted in her seat, opening her mouth to interrupt, but I continued before she could speak. The truth is, I don't need her money to be wealthy. Every day, I work with children who teach me about resilience, curiosity, and genuine joy. Last week, a 5-year-old boy named Jamal recognized all his letters for the first time. His face, the pride and excitement shining in his eyes was worth more than any commission check. I turned directly to my mother now, speaking just to her despite our audience. You've spent years telling me and apparently others that I'm not successful enough, not ambitious enough, not enough in all the ways that matter to you. Tonight, I realized something important. I don't need to be enough for you. I just need to be enough for myself and for the people whose lives I touch. The silence in the room was absolute now. Even the bartenders had paused in their work to listen. I came tonight hoping to bridge the gap between us, I said, my voice softening slightly. I see now that was naive. You can't bridge a gap when one person keeps moving the other shore. So instead of continuing to try, I'm going to thank you for one last thing, for showing me exactly the kind of person I don't want to become. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Success isn't measured in square footage or bank balances, I continued, addressing the room at large now. True wealth isn't about what you accumulate, but what you give away: your time, your knowledge, your compassion. By that measure, I'm rich beyond imagination. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a drawing one of my students had made for me that morning. It showed a stick figure with a huge smile surrounded by smaller figures, with "Miss Taylor is the best" written in wobbly letters across the top. This is my version of success, I said, holding it up briefly before returning it to my purse. It won't appreciate in value like real estate. It can't be displayed in a showcase home. But it represents a life of meaning and purpose, a life I'm proud of. I turned back to my mother, whose frozen expression revealed a mixture of rage and disbelief. I won't be taking any more of your time tonight or any other night. I'm done trying to earn approval that's perpetually out of reach. I'm done making myself small to make you feel big. And I'm definitely done apologizing for the life I've chosen. With that, I picked up a glass of water from the table. To independence, I said, raising it slightly before setting it down untouched. The greatest gift you never meant to give me. Happy birthday, Mom. As I turned to walk away, I caught glimpses of the guests' reactions. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed. A few, including Eleanor and, surprisingly, Charles from the firm, seemed to be hiding smiles behind their napkins. Madison's mouth hung open in undisguised astonishment, but it was my mother's expression that stayed with me as I walked steadily toward the exit, the look of someone who had just lost something they hadn't realized they valued until it was gone. The night air felt crisp and clean as I walked to my car, each step lighter than the last. The valet looked surprised when I declined his offer to retrieve my Honda, preferring to walk to the far end of the lot where I'd ultimately parked it myself. The solitary journey gave me time to process what had just happened. I'd finally spoken my truth after years of swallowing it down. The liberation was dizzying, like removing a heavy backpack I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my body. Inside my car, I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, expecting tears or regret or at least anxiety about the bridges I'd just burned. Instead, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The radio played softly as I drove away from Westview Country Club, leaving behind the crystal chandeliers, forced laughter, and suffocating expectations. The 40-minute drive home became a transition between worlds. With each mile, the evening's confrontation receded, and thoughts of tomorrow's lesson plans with my kindergartners took its place. We were learning about butterflies, the miraculous transformation from caterpillar to chrysalis to winged beauty. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. My phone began buzzing halfway home, text notifications lighting up the screen on my dashboard. I pulled into a gas station to check them, surprised to find messages from several guests at the party. "Bravo," read one from Eleanor. "Long overdue. Lunch next week? My treat." Charles from the firm had written, "Your mother won't admit it, but what you said needed saying. Respect." 3 other messages came from people I barely knew, acquaintances of my mother's who apparently had seen through her carefully curated image long before tonight. I responded to Eleanor, accepting her lunch invitation, then continued home with a strange new feeling blooming in my chest. It felt like being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. My apartment welcomed me home with its familiar comfort. The second-hand furniture and modest decor that had always embarrassed my mother now looked different to me, not as signs of financial limitation, but as deliberate choices reflecting my values and personality. The bookshelf overflowing with children's literature. The wall covered with artwork from former students. The cozy reading nook where I prepared lesson plans each evening. This was my kingdom, small but genuine. I had just changed into pajamas when my phone rang. Madison's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself for her anger. "What the hell was that?" she demanded without preamble. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Said what needed saying," I replied calmly. "Something I should have done years ago. Mom is furious. She's talking about having security remove you if you ever show up at one of her properties again." Madison's voice trembled with indignation. "The Richardsons left early. So did the Kimballs. You embarrassed her in front of everyone who matters." "That wasn't my intention," I said truthfully. "I just needed to speak my truth for once." "Your truth?" she scoffed. "You self-righteous?" "Madison," I interrupted gently. "Has it ever occurred to you that Mom might be manipulating you the same way she tried to manipulate me? That making us compete for her approval keeps us both under her control?" A long silence followed. When Madison spoke again, her voice had lost some of its edge. "What are you talking about? Did you know she's been telling people I constantly ask her for money? That she updated her will yesterday specifically so she could ambush me tonight?" "That's not," Madison hesitated. "She said you were jealous of me, that you resented my success." "I've never been jealous of you, Maddie," I said, using her childhood nickname for the first time in years. "I've always been proud of you. We just chose different paths." Another silence, this one thoughtful rather than hostile. "Walter showed you the will, didn't he?" "Yes." She sighed heavily. "I told her not to do it that way. I said if she wanted to leave everything to me, fine, but to talk to you privately. She insisted it needed to be public to teach you a lesson," were her exact words. The confirmation of my mother's premeditation stung, but less sharply than it would have hours earlier. "And that doesn't strike you as manipulative? Cruel, even." "It's just Mom being Mom," Madison said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "She has high standards. She wants what's best for us." "What's best for us? Or what reflects best on her?" I challenged gently. "Think about it, Madison. Has she ever supported a choice that didn't align with her vision for your life?" The line went quiet again. I could almost hear her thoughts churning. "I have to go," she said finally. "Mom's calling for me. Just know you've really upset her, Cass." "I'm sorry for that," I said sincerely. "But I'm not sorry for what I said." After hanging up, I blocked my mother's number, a preventive measure against the barrage of angry calls I expected would follow. The action felt both terrifying and empowering, another step toward genuine independence. The next morning, I woke with the sun, feeling strangely refreshed despite the emotional tumult of the previous evening. My classroom beckoned 22 5-year-olds who couldn't care less about real estate empires or inheritance disputes. Miss Harmon, the principal, stopped me in the hallway before first bell. "Cassandra, do you have a minute?" My stomach tightened with sudden worry. Had my mother somehow called the school to complain? Would my personal drama affect my professional life? Instead, Miss Harmon smiled warmly. I've been reviewing teacher assignments for next year. The board has approved funding for a lead teacher position in the kindergarten department. The role would include mentoring new teachers and helping develop curriculum. I'd like you to consider applying. Me? I blinked in surprise. I'm honored you'd think of me. You're our strongest kindergarten teacher, she said matter-of-factly. The children adore you, and your assessment scores are consistently impressive. Just think about it, okay? Applications are due next Friday. The offer buoyed my spirits as I greeted my students, their excited chatter about butterflies and weekend adventures washing away the last remnants of last night's confrontation. During morning circle time, little Zoe presented me with a dandelion she'd picked on her way to school. It's gold, just like your heart, Miss Taylor, she explained seriously. I tucked the wilting weed behind my ear, like a priceless orchid, earning delighted giggles from the class. In that moment, my mother's rejection seemed insignificant compared to the genuine acceptance I found here every day. After school, I was surprised to receive an email from Eleanor, confirming our lunch date and attaching information about several educational grants offered by her foundation. These might interest you, she wrote, particularly the Classroom Enrichment Program for Underserved Districts. Your students sound like perfect candidates. That evening, a courier delivered an envelope to my apartment. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a brief note in Walter's handwriting. For your classroom, no strings attached. Your grandmother would be proud of the woman you've become. I sat on my sofa, staring at the check with mixed emotions. While I appreciated Walter's gesture and the good it could do for my students, I couldn't help wondering if accepting it would somehow pull me back into the orbit I'd just escaped. After careful consideration, I decided to deposit it into a separate account, earmarked specifically for classroom supplies and field trips. The money would serve my students, not me personally, a distinction that felt important. The first week after my mother's birthday party passed in a blur of butterfly habitats, phonics lessons, and playground supervision. I waited for the other shoe to drop for my mother to escalate her retaliation or for flying monkeys to appear on her behalf. Instead, there was silence. The absence of drama created space for something new to grow, confidence in my decision, certainty in my path. Madison texted once, "Mom's telling everyone you had a mental breakdown. Just for your information." I responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji, which felt more liberating than any lengthy defense. With each passing day, my mother's opinion, the measuring stick I'd used for so long, became less relevant. The lead teacher application sat on my desk at home, half completed. My students' butterfly chrysalises began showing signs of imminent emergence. Life continued, different but purposeful. I was living proof that sometimes, the best revenge against someone who thinks you're nothing is to build a meaningful life they can't diminish. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of change. My classroom transformed through the generosity of Eleanor's foundation. Grant new books filled the reading corner. Science equipment upgraded our discovery station, and each child received their own set of high-quality art supplies. The joy on their faces when they unwrapped their personalized art kits was worth more than any luxury watch or designer handbag. My apartment changed too. Not through expensive renovations, but through purpose. I'd moved to a slightly larger unit closer to school. With a spare bedroom, I converted into a planning space for lessons and projects. The walls displayed framed artwork from students past and present, a gallery of creativity and growth that greeted me each morning. Eleanor proved to be a valuable mentor and friend. Our weekly lunches became a highlight, her wisdom and encouragement helping me navigate both professional challenges and personal healing. Boundaries aren't barriers, she reminded me often. They're defining lines that protect what matters. What surprised me most during these months wasn't my mother's continued absence. It was how others in her circle responded to my independence. Several of her friends reached out, some apologetically explaining they'd witnessed her manipulative behavior for years but never felt it was their place to interfere. Charles from the firm invited me to speak at a fundraiser for educational initiatives his company supported. Even the country club's event coordinator contacted me about potentially hosting a teacher appreciation dinner. It seemed my mother's attempts to damage my reputation had backfired. Her narrative about my constant requests for money fell apart when people witnessed my genuine surprise at her public accusation. The image she'd carefully constructed of herself as the long-suffering mother of an ungrateful daughter crumbled when confronted with the reality of who I actually was. My classroom received community support beyond anything I'd imagined. Parents volunteered more frequently. Local businesses donated supplies. A tech company provided tablets for our reading station. The validation wasn't just personal. It confirmed that the work I did mattered, that investing in children's futures was valued beyond my classroom walls. I just finished helping my students plant a butterfly garden outside our classroom window when I spotted a familiar car in the school parking lot. Madison sat behind the wheel, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, her expression uncertain as she watched children stream out for dismissal. When she spotted me, she raised a hesitant hand in greeting. I walked over, curious rather than defensive. "This is a surprise," I said, leaning against her car door. Madison looked different, somehow less polished, more human. "I had a fight with Mom," she admitted. "A big one." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be." She gave a humorless laugh. "It was long overdue. Can we talk somewhere? Please?" We ended up at a small cafe near the school, Madison fidgeting with her napkin as she struggled to find words. "She fired my assistant yesterday," she finally said. "Tiffany, the one who's been with me for 2 years, said she was too independent and a bad influence. The thing is, Tiffany's amazing at her job. The only thing she did wrong was suggest I consider a property Mom didn't want me to list." I nodded, recognizing the pattern. Mom doesn't like people who think for themselves. I defended Tiffany, Madison continued. It turned into this huge argument about how I never appreciate what Mom does for me, how I'm becoming ungrateful just like you. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. And suddenly, I heard her, really heard her. It was like listening to a stranger. Everything was about control, about owning my success rather than supporting it. The revelation clearly shook her. "I started thinking about what you said that night about manipulation and competing for her approval, about how she uses money to control people, and I couldn't stop seeing it everywhere. It's like taking off blinders," I said gently. "Once you see it, you can't unsee it." Madison nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I always thought you were exaggerating, that you were just being difficult or stubborn. I never realized." She trailed off, wiping her eyes carefully to preserve her makeup. "I've been awful to you, haven't I?" "We were both playing the roles she assigned us," I replied. "The golden child and the scapegoat. It's a common dynamic in families like ours." "How do you know that?" I smiled slightly. "Therapy. Twice a week for the past 3 months. It's been eye-opening." Madison absorbed this information, then reached across the table to take my hand, a gesture so unexpected it momentarily rendered me speechless. "I miss my sister," she said simply. "The one who taught me how to braid my hair and helped me with science projects. The one who defended me when kids made fun of my braces. I miss you, Cass." The sincerity in her voice touched something deep within me. Healing my relationship with my mother might be impossible, but perhaps reconnecting with Madison wasn't. "I miss you too," I admitted. "And I'm here, whenever you're ready." Our reconciliation wasn't instantaneous or perfect. Years of competition and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in a single cafe conversation. But it was a beginning, a fragile bridge being rebuilt, one honest conversation at a time. Meanwhile, therapy helped me understand the roots of my mother's behavior and my responses to it. "You were dealing with narcissistic parenting," Dr. Levine explained during one session. "Your value was always conditional on meeting her needs and reflecting her desired image." Understanding didn't excuse my mother's actions, but it helped me process the pain without internalizing it. I learned that her inability to love me unconditionally reflected her limitations, not my worthiness. I discovered that family isn't just defined by blood, but by consistent care and mutual respect. My classroom became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my hard-won insights into creating a nurturing environment for children. When Jamal's mother wrote me a letter describing how her son had gone from hating school to wanting to become a teacher just like Miss Taylor, I cried happy tears and framed her words beside my teaching certificate. In late June, as the school year wound down, my phone displayed a familiar name I hadn't seen in months. My mother. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Cassandra," she began, her voice carrying that artificial warmth she used for important clients. "I think we should talk." "About what?" I asked, neither hostile nor eager. "Things have been difficult since your outburst at my party," she said, already reframing history in her favor. "Several of my friends have been asking about you. The Richardsons even declined my dinner invitation last week, saying they had a fundraiser at some elementary school instead. I believe it was yours." I suppressed a smile. "That's their choice." "Well, it's becoming inconvenient," she continued. "I think we should put this ugliness behind us. Perhaps you could join Madison and me for dinner next weekend? We could discuss how to move forward as a family." 3 months ago, I would have jumped at this olive branch, however self-serving it might be. Now, I recognized it for what it was, not reconciliation, but damage control. "I appreciate the invitation," I said carefully. "But I need something first." "What?" Suspicion colored her tone, an acknowledgement of what really happened. Not just at the party, but throughout our relationship. The manipulation, the lies about me asking for money, the conditional love. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. "I don't know what you've been telling people," she finally said. "But that's not how I remember things at all." "Then we don't have anything to discuss," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, Mom, but only if it's based on honesty and mutual respect." "You always were stubborn," she snapped, her pleasant facade cracking. "Just like your father." "Well, don't come crying to me when that teaching job doesn't pay your bills or when you're old and alone because you chose finger paints over a real career." The insults washed over me without penetrating. "I wish you well, Mom. My door is open if you ever want to try again with honesty." I ended the call before she could respond. That evening, I hosted a small classroom fundraiser in the school gymnasium. Parents, colleagues, and community supporters gathered to view the children's butterfly-themed art exhibition. Mrs. Richardson, my mother's tennis partner turned unexpected ally, arrived with her husband and a generous donation. Eleanor brought several foundation board members. Even Madison came, tentatively finding her place in this world so different from her usual social circles. As I watched my students proudly explaining their artwork to attentive adults, I felt a profound sense of contentment. This was wealth that couldn't be quantified in dollars or square footage connections, growth, positive impact on young lives. The journey from my mother's birthday party to this moment hadn't been easy. There had been difficult days, moments of doubt, old habits of seeking external validation that needed conscious rewiring. But with each step, the path became clearer. Independence, the very quality my mother had tried to weaponize against me, had indeed become my greatest strength. Life without my mother's approval wasn't diminished, it was expanded. Without her narrow definition of success constraining my choices, I discovered more authentic ways to measure my worth, not through designer labels or luxury addresses, but through the lives I touched and the integrity with which I lived. As the event wound down, little Zoe approached with a drawing of a vibrant butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. "It's you, Miss Taylor," she explained, pointing to the butterfly. "You were all wrapped up tight, and now you're flying." Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom sometimes. That night, I added her drawing to my wall gallery, a reminder that transformation often requires breaking free of confining structures, even when those structures are built by the people who should love us most. What's your story of standing up for yourself? Have you ever had to break free from someone else's expectations to find your true path? Hit like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else find their wings. Remember, sometimes the people who tell you you're nothing are actually afraid of everything you might become. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep nurturing what matters most, your authentic self.